We're living in the most absurd era of human history, and I mean that in the best possible way. You're sitting in an exam hall, sweating over a formula you memorized last night, desperately hoping your brain doesn't betray you. Meanwhile, your phone, sitting in your bag, switched off, treated like contraband, has access to every formula ever written. It's like having a world-class chef in your pocket but being forced to cook with your bare hands and a lighter. So here's the question that's been bugging me. Does any of this make sense? You're memorizing the full forms of NASA and UNESCO, memorizing chemical equations, memorizing dates of historical events, when you could literally just ask chatgpt and get the answer in 2 seconds. At first, honestly, it didn't make sense to me at all. It felt like we're playing some weird game where everyone pretends the internet doesn't exist. Like we're stuck in 1985 while living in 2025. But here's what I've come to realize. The real answer isn't yes, memorize everything, or no, just Google it. The real answer is both. And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but stick with me, because this gets interesting. The reason we're so confused about this is because there's a massive misconception sitting at the center of how we think about learning. Most people believe that learning equals memory, and memory equals knowledge. Like they're all the same thing. They're not even close. And once you understand what memory actually is, and why it's not what we think it is, everything clicks. You'll know exactly when to memorize, when to understand, and when to just let technology handle it. You'll finally have a framework for using LLMs and search engines wisely instead of just randomly Googling stuff and hoping it sticks. So let's break this down. What actually happens when you learn something? Here's a question. What even is learning? Like what's actually happening in your head when you learn something? Let's say you're trying to learn what gravity is. Not just the word, but what it actually means. What's happening inside your brain? Here's what's happening. You're trying to make sense of this new thing, gravity, using stuff you already know. You're connecting it to things that feel familiar and evident to you. Maybe you think about how things fall when you drop them. Maybe you remember the apple falling on Newton's head. Maybe you connect it to the feeling of your feet pressing against the ground. You're not starting from zero. You're linking gravity to your existing mental framework. You're finding where it fits. And here's the key part. If you have enough background knowledge to make those connections, you start to grasp what gravity really is. And that grasp, it gets stored somewhere in your mind as a memory. But notice something crucial here. You didn't learn gravity by trying to memorize it. You learned it by trying to understand it. The memory came as a byproduct. It showed up naturally because you made sense of the thing. This is massive, and most people completely miss it. Think about it like this. When you truly understand something, your brain goes, oh, this fits here, and connects to that, and explains this other thing. And because it's woven into your existing knowledge, it sticks. You don't have to force it. It becomes part of how you see the world. But here's where it gets tricky, because there's another thing we call memorization, and it works completely differently. When I say memorize, what do you picture? You probably picture sitting with a textbook, reading the same line over and over, trying to hammer it into your skull through pure repetition. Maybe you're using flashcards. Maybe you're writing things 10 times. Maybe you're muttering formulas under your breath like some kind of incantation. That's memorization. And here's what makes it fundamentally different from understanding. In memorization, you're not trying to make sense of the thing. You're not connecting it to your background knowledge. You're not asking why or how does this fit. You're just trying to store it in your mind by force. Earlier, with understanding, memory was a byproduct. It came naturally because you made sense of something. But with memorization, memory is the entire goal. You're not trying to understand, you're trying to store. Think about your phone number. Do you understand it? Is there some deep principle behind why those specific digits are in that order? No, it's arbitrary. It's random. There's nothing to get. You just have to shove it into your memory through sheer repetition until it's stuck. Same with your address. Same with passwords. Same with someone's birthday. There's no underlying logic to grasp. You just have to remember. In essence, understanding is connecting the dots. Figuring out how different pieces of information relate to each other, how they fit together, how they create meaning. When you do this successfully, memory happens automatically as a byproduct. Memorization, by contrast, is storing the dots without knowing how they fit together. You are not making connections or building meaning. You are loading information into your brain like files into a folder, hoping you can retrieve them later. Both processes are useful, but they serve completely different purposes. Now we can finally answer the real question. Can technology replace learning? Here's the short answer. Technology cannot replace understanding, but it can partly replace memorization. Let me explain both. Why technology can't replace understanding? When you search for something or ask an LLM, you get information, but information isn't understanding. Understanding means you've connected that information to your existing mental framework. You know why it's true. You can apply it to new situations. You can use it. If you just copy an answer from ChatGPT without understanding why it works, you can't actually use that knowledge. The moment the situation changes slightly, you're stuck. You're like a calculator. You can produce answers, but you can't decide what to calculate or recognize when to apply it. You can't outsource understanding. It has to happen inside your head. Why technology can partly replace memorization. For arbitrary information, things like capitals of countries, atomic weights, historical dates, technology works great. Why memorize something you'll really need when you can look it up in 3 seconds? But here's the catch. Some things need to be available instantly. If you're fixing a car, coding in flow state, or sitting in an interview, you can't pause to Google every little thing. For frequently used information, you need it in your head. But here's the good news, you usually don't need to force memorize even these things. So here's how to think about all of this. For things with underlying logic, learn them, understand them, connect them to what you already know. Searching gives you information, understanding gives you capability. This is non-negotiable. For arbitrary things you'll rarely need, just search. Let technology handle storage and retrieval. Matter of fact, rote closest is neutral, which isn't available, so calm/relaxed again. That's what it's good for. For arbitrary things you'll rarely need, just search. Let technology handle storage and retrieval. That's what it's good for. For arbitrary things you'll need frequently, use them repeatedly. Let technology support you at first, but actually work with the information. Through exposure, they'll stick naturally. The key insight is this. Technology can substitute for storing arbitrary information, but it cannot substitute for understanding. And it cannot substitute for instantly available knowledge you need in the moment. So when you're studying, don't try to memorize explanations like you would memorize a phone number. That's backwards. Try to actually understand. Connect concepts to what you already know. If you do that, memory comes for free. And for arbitrary stuff, full forms, dates, specific names, either let technology handle it or expose yourself to it enough that it sticks naturally. Don't torture yourself with rote memorization when you don't have to.